Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. I am one of your hosts, Kwame Appiah, the head of influencer engagement at Later.
Hey everyone, Scott Sutton, co-host and CEO of Later. Great to have you guys today. Really excited to get into it.
Very, very excited. Today we have with us one of Seattle's very favorite people, one of my favorite influencers overall. One of the first people that I actually met in the Seattle, I guess, like influencer scene. And she's been doing incredible work overall. You can't really go to any sporting events without hearing her voice. So we're very lucky to be able to borrow her voice for today. How are we doing today, Carla Marie?
Hi, Kwame. Hi, Scott. Thank you for that intro. That was pretty cool.
That's what I'm here for. I'm basically my job role within this podcast is just come up with good intros, and then Scott does the rest of the interviewing.
I might take that audio and use it for some other things. I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, we'll softball it to start.
Okay.
How's your weekend? And I guess like it's a holiday week.
It is.
What are your plans for this week?
So I'm actually off this week. So this doesn't count as work. We are putting out no content this week, no new content. Anthony, my co-host and boyfriend, is in Japan. I sat back on this trip, so I'm having a staycation, and I decided that whatever I want to do that day when I wake up is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going day by day.
Love it.
Nice.
I know. I never get to do that, so this is very rare.
I was going to say, because looking at all the things you have your hands in at the moment, a staycation seems warranted. You've got the Seahawks, you've got the morning show podcast, creating content all the time on Instagram. How do you, balance all that you got going on?
Not well, but I get by. That is definitely something that I want to be better at, balancing or just creating a better routine. But I've definitely gotten better where I know, okay, for example, Seahawks training camp is coming up in August. That's going to be a lot of days for me from 10 to 4. So what can I do in advance? Do I not take on any clients or campaigns for social so that I'm not creating content in the middle of that like I have in the past? Or make sure I spend the weekend before doing some extra prep for the morning show podcast so that it's not 10 p.m. the night before and I'm still just researching news of that day. Because when I'm at training camp, I am at training camp. I can't be on my phone looking up stuff. It's nonstop. So that I've learned now to just prep a little bit better, but there's always room for improvement.
Yes, of course. You've obviously been in it for quite a while. How many years now have you been in like this media realm?
I started as an intern in radio in 2009. So just hit the 15-year mark. It was May of 2009, which is crazy.
Nice.
Yeah. You were like 10, right?
Yeah. I got my job in radio at 10. No, I was 21. Yes. Yeah, I was 21. And there was no Instagram. Twitter just kind of came out. It was part of one of my college classes to get a Twitter. And Facebook, at that point, I think you still needed a college email address to be on Facebook. And fan pages weren't even out. It was my job at the radio station to create the fan pages for some of the biggest radio stations in the world. Wow. That's how, as an intern.
It's crazy to think about having a front seat through that entire evolution. Like I remember that I had my U of O gladstone.edu to get signed up for Facebook. It's just crazy how it's all morphed. Yeah. So coming from radio, now you have your hand in so many things. Like how did that evolution happen? Did you always want to go into media? Were you like radio's the thing, or did you just kind of fall into it? I,
as a kid, just was so enamored by TV hosts like TRL, MTV hosts, all of that. I wanted it bad. I knew I could do it. I knew I was best at just talking. If you look at all the subjects in school, I knew that talking, presentations, whatever, that was my bread and butter. And I loved doing that. So I started to explore, well, what does that mean? What kind of jobs can I get? What does that major even? And I learned that I could get into radio or TV if I did journalism. I also liked writing. So magazines at the time, which I'm glad I didn't end up doing, but magazines were something I liked as well. And when I went to Rutgers, That's where I went, Rutgers University. The radio station was closer to my dorm than the TV station. I said, all right, I'll try the radio station. So my laziness is what got me into the path of radio. And I worked at the radio station there, got into my internship, ended up becoming a producer and on-air contributor at Elvis Duran in the Morning Show podcast, get my own morning show in Seattle, and did that for 5 years before. And you asked about the transition. It wasn't a choice of my own. It was a choice of the companies to say, okay, we're moving on from your show. You guys, this is your last day of work. And it was like a gut punch, but also I knew I needed something more, something different. And 2 days later, we just switched to being digital. And it's been 4 years at this point.
Wow. So, I mean, like at the end of the day, it all works out for the best.
Yes.
What would you say like have been the biggest things that you've noticed as things have gone on through your journey, right? Like when you started, obviously, like you said, there was barely any Twitter, no Instagram. As this entire journey has gone, through being in media and now adding so many different parts of it that make you this complete creator. What are some of the biggest things that you've noticed in that transition?
Noticed like good or bad specifically, or
I think the bad's always good to hear. But yeah,
it's a lot going from having the backing of a major media company and having other people that also work, whether you have a sales team, a promo team, a producer, to doing it on your own. Because now there's two of us doing all of, we don't have anyone else. I mean, now, yes, with the podcast, we are represented by a podcast company, Gemini 13. They sell the podcast ads. But when it comes to anything else, it's just the two of us. So when you think, oh, social media content, that's great, you should put that out. Well, it is so hard to do content for your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, for my account, Anthony's account, and the show's joint account. Wow. That's really 12 pieces of content right there. Or even if you take one piece of content, it's just working on all the different sizes. What is it? Is it better on Twitter to do it like this? Is it better on Facebook here or TikTok? All of that. And it's a lot. So that is one thing I've learned, is that it is very hard to be on your own and promote yourself and actually do the job at the same time. Like we do the podcast, but then we also have to promote the podcast. And that's a job in and of itself, as I'm sure you guys know at this point.
100%. Yeah. It's funny because I think so many people are like, oh, you chop it up into clips, throw it on social. And I think, we talk a lot about, praising the team we work with and all the things that they do to make sure that the edit gets out and then social is updated, and it is a lot of work. So I'm curious, throwing it back. Yeah. I'm curious, who's your favorite TV host of any of the shows? You threw out TRL, and so I don't know if that's it, but I'm curious, who's your number one?
Man, number one TV show host, Oprah. Of all time, Oprah. Because as a kid, before my mom would have to go to work, we would watch Oprah together on the couch. Now, this is the 90s, and I'm between 8 and 10 years old watching this woman have her own TV show. And people have often asked me questions about, oh, well, was it hard to be a woman in media, or how did you get into media? And for me, it was like, well, Oprah always had a show. So I knew I could do it. And I never, it was just always in the back of my mind. And Oprah wasn't doing fluff TV. If you remember her original shows, she was talking about serious stuff. And it's just always been in the back of my mind that I could do that, some form of that. And then when I got into radio, I was surrounded by other women who didn't take crap from anybody at the show I was at Elvis Duran in the Morning Show. So I just always felt very supported in the world of media. But man, I want Oprah to bring back her show so bad.
I just want Oprah to come back so that I can be in the guest and she can say, everyone look under your seats.
Your student loans are paid for.
That's basically what I'm looking forward to.
Same.
But I guess backtracking again, funny thing. So you were born in Secaucus, right?
I was born in Secaucus, New Jersey. Yes.
Yes, which is, I have a funny little story. Secaucus probably isn't a place that a ton of people have heard about, but it's pretty close to New York City. And so back in the day when I was in college, my closest friend in college was the goalie for the girls soccer team at my school. And when I couldn't find a way to get back to my home back in DC, because I went to school in Delaware, she would just say, "Hey, hop in and I'll take you back home for Christmas." And so she lived in Secaucus. And so
that's crazy.
That's how I know, isn't it? Out of everywhere in the world,
yep.
The place that I would go for Christmas sometimes in college was Secaucus. So, you're born in Secaucus, life starts. I guess when you were starting up, what were your dreams and aspirations? Like, what did you initially think you were going to be doing with life before you found out you just like to talk?
I mean, that dream started at like 10. So before that, it was like, I'm going to be an NFL cheerleader. Now, hey, I guess like I'm super, super close to that. I'm as close to that as I could have gotten, really, being on the sidelines at a Seahawks game. But it was always radio. I grew up listening to Elvis Duran in the morning show. For me, it was on Z100. It's nationally syndicated now. But I loved listening to them. I would sit in the car. I would get into school late because I wanted to hear a phone tap. And then fast forward however many years, and I'm the one doing the phone taps on the air. It's bizarre. And my mom, she'll even tell you, like, I would be like, I want to do what they do. And she would say, okay, you do whatever you want. Like, it's up to you. You can do it. And it is bizarre that it was the same show I listened to, I ended up working for. It's just crazy to me. But yeah, it was always radio. And never, once I got into radio, never did I think I would leave or do anything else other than radio. But getting to do all that other stuff has been the most rewarding thing.
That's amazing. It's funny. I just imagine you on the sideline next to the Seahawks gal or Sea gals, like doing the moves. Like
I am. I mess with them all the time. I'm like, you guys are going to teach me a dance one of these games. And after watching the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, the Netflix show, man, it's no joke. I mean, I was a cheerleader in high school and college. College? Who am I kidding? I didn't make the college team. In high school, I can't even, like, that is such an intense world. I'm like, I'll be on the sidelines with the microphone. That's
that was watching that. So, Chelsea and I watched it as well. We ran through the whole thing. And one of our friends down here actually used to be a DCC cheerleader.
Oh, wow.
CC, who's Brian Walters, who used to play. Yeah. Do you know Brian? Yeah, exactly.
He
Brian
played
Walters'
in the basketball game with you guys.
Yes, exactly. His girlfriend, CC, used to be a DCC for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And so, like, the minute we started tuning in, we were like, we wanted all the gossip. We hit her up and we were like, it's just how it really is. And watching it, it is incredibly intense. Like, these are the creme de la creme of athletes. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
The amount of exhaustion and just strain they put on their bodies to make this happen. It's like, so seeing that, it's pretty intense.
And as they said, for the wage of a Chick-fil-A worker.
Oh, I know. It's crazy, but that's a topic for another day. We
glad
definitely got to touch on that.
Listen, they're amazing. Glad I didn't go down that route. I'll stick to the media side.
So I'm curious, you talked about your journey and coming up, you're working in radio, you transitioned to be a producer. Where did the break come from to transition to go from producing to go on screen? And what was that like? Because I think a lot of people out there, they're like waiting for that break or trying to set themselves up. Like, how did that come to be?
So I was a phone op. So I was the phone producer at Elvis Duran in the morning show. So I would answer every call that came into the morning show. It's a very call intensive show. I would prep them, say it like this, get them on the air. And that was my main job for a very long time. But the way that show runs is Elvis does such a good job at bringing everyone in. So not every radio show is like this. If I, the 21 or 22-year-old, had something crazy or something funny, whatever it was to talk about, I would pitch it to him and he would say, okay, we'll talk about this. Or you wouldn't know. And he would be like, hey, Carla Marie, get in here. And you'd be live on the air running into the studio and you would talk about whatever that topic is. And other radio shows have the behind the scenes people pitch these topics and then they give it to co-hosts to talk about it as if it is their life. That is not how Elvis's show works at all. And I think Anthony and I, we built our careers off of that, of just telling the truth and telling your story, even if it's not like the most fascinating or sexy thing, it's still you. And that's how Elvis's show was. So to go from producer to being on air, I was kind of doing both. My on-air role was growing a lot more. I eventually got my own segment called What's Trending. So it was a daily, and I would just talk about a cool product or app or anything that I think, you should be downloading or buying. And it was not paid at all. And this is, 10 years ago at this point. It would just be, hey, I think you should check this out. And it was my way to start getting small businesses on this huge, huge platform of 6 million daily listeners, and just be like, yeah, go check out this bracelet company. It's this girl in her basement, Little Words Project. She's, making these on her own. And now I still have them on my wrist all these years later. And it's a $1 million company. And I think for me, I got bit by the radio bug. I got bit by the supporting small business bug. And I still love producing and doing things behind the scenes. And I got to do all of that at once. So I guess that's eventually how I transitioned. And then I did a podcast while I was there as just something fun to do, wasn't paid for. Anthony, who was my coworker, we both did the podcast together, and the company iHeartRadio was like, hey, you guys sound good together. Do you want a morning show in Seattle? And that's how we went. But I mean, we still, till this day, and even then, produce our morning show, even with the producer. We're very hands-on.
So is that what prompted the move to Seattle?
Yeah. So we got asked about the show December of 2015. And by February 10th, I lived here. 10th? Yeah. So, yeah, we got asked about the show. We came out here January 3rd, I think, for like 8 hours, missed our connecting flight. So we were only here in the dark in January. So I have no idea what Seattle looked like in the light. And before I signed my contract, and then we came out here to do like some promo and flip the radio station, because I went from hip hop to top 40, and went back, packed up everything, and then drove a U-Haul out here. So less than 2 months. And we were hosting a morning show in a city where I didn't even have a home yet. I was living in a hotel room. And now it's 8 years later, and this is very much my home.
Did they tell you why Seattle?
It was, they were changing so much, which is such a bad idea in radio. Now looking back, they changed 2, 3, 4 radio stations at the same time in one market, all under the same company. So how radio works is each city has several radio stations under their umbrella, and they're all different genres. So you often have hip hop, your light FM type music, sports, top 40. And then there's like the in between, or hot AC as it's called in radio. So in between top 40 and your work music, if you will. And they just changed so much at once. So they were moving stations to different frequencies, switching morning show hosts. They fired a whole bunch of people. And I mean, we didn't know anything. No one knew who we were. It was so under wraps. And then we just appeared and we're like, hey, we're your new coworkers and this is our morning show. And it was just a bizarre time. But why Seattle? I don't know. I guess ratings weren't great. I don't know. This is one of the worst radio markets. I'm not just saying that. It is known to be the worst radio market to work in, period, because of the amount of changes that they make here. And I did not know that moving here. So.
Well, it's crazy thinking about, the various leaps of faith that you've taken. I'm going to start this podcast and then it's, I'm going to get picked up and get offered this opportunity, but it's contingent on me just picking up my whole life and moving. One thing you hit on struck me, which was, when you talked about working with Elvis and pitching different ideas and kind of just sharing your story, sharing your truth, being vulnerable, as of late, you had a pretty vulnerable experience. And, Kwame and I were talking about it, and we love that you're sharing that with the world, because there's a lot of women who wouldn't have that kind of guidance, that experience, someone like you to help give them the confidence, the empowerment to make a decision for their health. And, but it's so incredibly challenging to put yourself out there. And so whatever you feel comfortable with sharing, but obviously it's out there on social. So
of course,
people
it's
can go
everywhere.
find it. But I think we were really impressed about how much you put yourself out there.
Thank you. So yes, I had my breast implants removed after over 10 years of having them. And to what you said, people keep saying to me, oh, it's so amazing that you're doing this. And I don't disagree. You are correct. It's awesome that women get to hear this story and know they're not crazy. They're not alone. Something could be wrong. But the only way I know how to operate is to just talk about everything that I'm doing and bringing people along for the ride. And that goes, I mean, when I got the implants in, it was a whole thing on Elvis's show at the time. And back then it was with one of our clients. So I was very lucky that I didn't have to pay for the implants, just the explant. So they were a client. And I was 25 years old and I got breast implants and I loved them. They were the best and we had the best times together. But I got to a point recently over the last few years where I was like, I don't know. I don't feel great. I know that breast implant illness is a thing now. Didn't know it existed when I got them. And I just started following these women who were talking about it. So to what you're saying, I did the same thing to other women. I followed their stories. And I realized that these things have to come out of me because I'm having pains. I have 30 symptoms that are apparently a part of this thing called breast implant illness. And I said, well, I'm not just going to do this and that's it. We're doing this. So I decided to launch a podcast called My Breast Explant Journey. And I think at this point I'm 13 episodes in. And I've just talked to different women who have been through it to tell their story. But I'm also still very much learning about this. Doctors are still learning about this, which is crazy. But to what you said, I've had women reach out to me and say, I spent $10,000 on the doctor last year and they can't figure out what's wrong with me. I had no idea it could be my implants. I'm going for a consult next week. Or I sent your podcast to my neighbor. She's always sick and she has implants. And it's seeing in those moments, it's like, oh, this is why I've been putting in this extra work and telling my story. Because it's so rewarding to hear that and just know, like, I have this platform. Why not use it? Why not use it as a megaphone and scream about the things that matter and can help others? So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Gotta love it. You love it when people get a platform and they do good things with it.
I try. And some stupid things too, but whatever, balance.
It is all good, and obviously you're still learning a lot, but like, have you noticed any drastic, like, positive changes in your health already in your lifestyle?
Yes. So I instantly lost inflammation in my face, which I knew that my face was inflamed, but I had gained so much weight. So once I can start actually working out again and living a normal life, I'm hoping to lose some of the weight I gained. But that's a main symptom of breast implant illness is the weight gain, the inflammation. But it essentially disappeared from my face. I had my friend the other night say to me, I don't think I've ever seen your jawline like this. And I was like, thank you. I know, I can tell. Even my mom was like, whoa, your face looks different. That was the day after surgery. So that was nuts. I've had really bad sinus issues. I'd say they're 30% improved at this point. And that's 2 years. So that's just some of them. Upper back pain. I don't have the shooting pains in my breast that I had anymore. So they were apparently attached to my chest wall and my ribs. So that's what was causing the pain. No ruptures. I didn't have any of that. So you don't have to have a rupture or anything to have issues with them. But it's a very slow recovery process. I'm only 5 weeks out. It could take a full year to 2 for your body to detox the silicone.
I love that you're so open and willing to share. Again, I think there's so many things. It's funny because I think about the most minor things and I'm like, I'm not going to share. This could be a bad look. And it's like people are out there sharing like the hardest of the hard in their life and personal trauma and pain and like, there's lots of like spouse loss and other things and or child loss and things where I just couldn't imagine exposing myself on that level. But like you said, if you don't do that, if there aren't people willing to do that and share that experience, it's not going to give comfort or guidance to other folks navigating that situation. I think that is one of the good sides of social is there is almost for anything, there's someone out there that's shared an experience or a community that exists or someone to find, someone to talk to. I think that is the positive promise of social that, sometimes isn't delivered, but, more often should be. So it's amazing.
Scott, you nailed it with the word community. So there's a Facebook group called Breast Implant Illness. And when I first found out about breast implant illness, I joined this Facebook group. That's 2016, probably. I think it had like maybe 3,000 people. It's almost at 200,000. And when I tell people like, so in the Facebook group, I'm like, I swear it's not tin hat. I'm not crazy. And if it weren't for all of these women sharing their story, posting photos, I would have probably been freaking out calling my doctor every day. But I was like, oh, I know what that is. Yep, this person had it. It goes away in a day or two, and it did. So there was so much, not that I'm getting medical. I do not recommend getting any medical advice from Facebook or social media, but I had seen people go through it. And so I knew what to expect. And that community, like you said, is amazing. And I do see a lot in people who lose children, spouse law, all of that. I see all of that. And I'm like, wow, these people are so brave for sharing that, but they're helping so many people. So I think if everyone could be a little bit more vulnerable on social media, it would even be even better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'm working on that myself, and I see that there's a lot of moments where, you know, when you get online and you share something that somebody, like, a lot of the feedback and a lot of the response that I get it from are people who are like, may not even have like one or two posts, you know, like people who might not be open and ready and willing to share something like that, but they're going through something like that. And they like that validation for them is so important to know, like, I am not alone. And I think that that's one of the most impactful things about the internet and its access into what we have now is that people are constantly seeing other people going through the things that they're going through and like knowing that like, hey, it's okay that I'm going through this. Like, it's okay that I'm thinking about this.
Yeah. You're not crazy, or you might be crazy, but other people are also crazy just like you.
It's funny. I talk to a lot of people who, you know, they're like, I don't know what my calling is. I don't know what I'm meant to go do. Or like, I think about ways I want to give back and I can't figure it out. And it's so funny because like, I think the biggest guidance in it, and I'm guessing that you found this, is like, I think the beginning of it starts with figuring out what you really care about and who you are and like what you want to stand for. But there's some moments that you never expected in life would happen. You didn't expect you would be a champion for, you know, breast implant illness or explants or any of this. But when you find it, you know, and you get super passionate about it, and you don't have to force it. It's not something, you know, you wake up in the morning, you're like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a post. I'm going to check the boards. I'm going to help someone. I'd be curious, like, did you see that coming? Have you always wanted to get out and build community or?
No, it's you basically what you said is like, oh, it just happens and then you do it. That's essentially what it's been. Even going back to a complete opposite, but same thing, cats. So I never had cats growing up. I never liked cats. I now have 4 and I started collecting them in 2017, but I started working with a local animal rescue out here, Motley Zoo. They're amazing. They are the absolute best, the things that they do as an organization. But we were on the radio and they would bring us animals to talk about on the air. And they're not a shelter. They function only off of fosters, cats, dogs, rabbits, guinea pigs, whatever they rescue. And I said, I'll foster 2 kittens. That's fine. I'll figure it out. It can't be that hard. I ended up keeping those 2 kittens and they're my 7-year-old babies. But I work with Motley Zoo a lot on different foster initiatives, helping them when they get animals in, going there. Okay, we got to clean these puppies. They just came off of an airplane from Texas. They were saved from a no-kill shelter, things like that. I mean, I would have never in my life, I've fostered, I think 10 kittens at this point, and I only kept 4. So I'm still doing better, but just that and just advocating for that and teaching people, as crazy it is. I've had people reach out to me and say, I always hated cats and I didn't know how cool they were till you had them. And now I'm fostering. And I'm like, what? That's crazy to me. That's almost crazier than the breast implant illness thing to me. So yes, it's like with anything. I don't purposely say, oh, I'm going to do this and take a stand on it. It's no, this is how I feel. And in this moment, I'm going to talk about it and just see where it goes.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all the directions that you're going in, it seems like you've kind of gotten your formula down. I saw that, you know, with the talk show that y'all have, you now have, you know, Twitch streaming as well. Now, I'd love to start getting a little bit deeper into the creator and influencing side of things that you do. So I'd love to know a bit more about the Twitch experience. I want to eventually start Twitch
It's
streaming, and so I'd love to know kind of you guys when we came into your studio. I think we came a couple weeks ago to Marshall and I to chat, but also talk a bit about Champions of Change. But what I guess what encouraged the Twitch side of things and how's that going? And tell us a bit about the formula of starting that.
Great question. We actually started Twitch while we were still on the radio. So there was a time when they took us from mornings and put us on at night in one of the lovely change things that they did here in Seattle. And we were so used to people driving on their morning commute and calling into our show. And then at night, that doesn't happen. And it was just very much like crickets, Anthony and I sitting in the studio, like, this is boring without other people calling. Like, what are we going to do? So it was his idea was like, well, we should get on this thing called Twitch. Like Amazon just bought them or they're local. Okay, that's fine. So we figured out a way to rig up the studio where our mics would feed into Twitch, but the music wouldn't because that's not allowed. So we did all of that and we would then be able to get people to call in that were randomly watching us on Twitch. Fast forward, COVID hits and so many more people, and then we're back on mornings, but so many people were at home, physically could watch our show and they weren't listening on the radio anymore because they weren't in their car. So now we have more listeners probably on Twitch at that point than on the radio, and they would interact with us. And it was that instant interaction where they would just type something in the chat, like the AOL chat room style, and we would respond or shout them out on the air or respond to them on the chat, or during a commercial break, we would have conversations with them so that when we got let go, 2 days later, we're like, well, we'll just do it on Twitch. And that's essentially where that was the base of how it all happened. And we stayed on Twitch because it became such a community for us. The thing about Twitch is it's hard to use as a user. It's confusing. It's built for gamers who understand how things are gamified and the donating bits and doing this. It's not built for the 50-something-year-old mom who's used to listening to your radio show, taking her kids to school. But we trained our listeners how to use Twitch, and that's where they stayed. And we stream on YouTube now. We simulcast both of them, but most of our audience is still on Twitch, and it's been our saving grace.
Why is everyone buying you subs?
So
I saw that.
So I'm so glad you saw that. So there's if anyone's listening, they have no idea what's happening. On Twitch, you can subscribe to a channel. And it's always like, oh, thanks for subbing. Oh, this person gifted subs to other users. And when my family was watching, this whole time they were thinking that people were buying people sandwiches, subs. And it took them like 2-3 years to say this to me. And I was like, this whole time you thought I was getting hundreds of sandwiches a day? What are you talking about? So we've joked for a while now that like we need to team up with Jersey Mike's or something and do some sort of like donation to feed people. I don't know. There's something there with the subs, but yes. So
subs for subs or something.
Subs for subs. It's something.
It's so funny because, what you highlighted, it almost seems like there's a hybrid format that radio, if they were a little bit more forward thinking, could have adopted, which is a user friendly kind of video / audio interactive experience where they could really bring the users back in. Because I don't listen to radio at all. And a lot of people don't commute. I was listening to whatever War of the Roses and Z100 and all that stuff back in the day. I don't listen because I don't drive that often or my commute's a lot less. And so it's just, maybe there is that hybrid format they could have adopted to compete with those guys. But
there are shows that are doing it, but they're, as a whole, the radio industry is just... they're very much like get off my lawn and they'll say they're adapting, but it's up to the individual show. I mean, I have friends that are completely funding their own video stuff because the company doesn't believe in it. So it's frustrating because it's like, oh my God, but radio is so important. We are just letting it go, essentially, is what's happening. And I don't blame the listener for not listening. No one wants to hear a 10, 15-minute commercial break when you can just go to Spotify and not hear a single commercial. I get it. So I don't know what they're doing. It's a very sensitive subject for me. We can do a whole nother podcast about this.
Oh, man. So, I mean, I guess now that things are on the move, you've gotten probably a few opportunities, a couple collaborations. As you started your creator journey, have you had any partnerships and collaborations that have really stuck out to you?
I think it's probably the one that I have. It's been reoccurring for almost 2 years now, actually. The Little Robot. They're an incredible company. They're so fun with their social. And I will say that is the hardest part sometimes when you team up with these companies and they send you a 10 to 15 page do and don't, this, that, colors to wear, whatever, where Whisker, that's their parent company, they're very much like, no, I mean, just talk about it. And it's not like make sure the product is in frame. It's hard for me sometimes to just be creative and have fun with it because I am so used to that product in the, this third of the video. It has to be this many times, say it this many times, where Little Robot is like, nah, just have fun. Just show the cats and talk about it a little bit. And I've been for 2 years now making videos for them that they use as their ads and they boost their ads on Facebook and it's everywhere. I just filmed one for them this weekend and this was the first time where I was very much like, just have fun. It doesn't have to be so serious with it, but man, they let you just be a cat mom, essentially. They know that the product, just talk about it. But yeah, they're probably the best one, most fun.
That's awesome. And I think for folks listening who might not know all the ins and outs, it's such a powerful tool to have influencer generated content that can be repurposed for ads. And there's so much more genuine. And you think about, you have a natural organic reach with your follower base, but if they put dollars behind it, they target specific audiences, they push it across different channels. And even, we're taking things off and going connected TV ads or traditional display or all kinds of different places. You could see that same influencer piece of content that was originally created for Instagram in a whole variety of places. And it just hits a lot better because it is the one that's funny or genuine or highlights the product in a unique way. I think consumers have just gotten so, immune to this kind of really polished business produced ad, and they want to see a real person using a product in a fun and creative way. I
agree. And I've also started to see, I feel like TV is scrambling a little bit when it comes to this because they're trying to do, so I've seen some commercials where they're trying to make it look like it is an influencer ad, but it's still just actors. And listen, I want these people they should have jobs, voiceover actors, just TV actors, obviously, but they're trying to make it look like it's a social media campaign on TV and very similar to where radio is. It's like, they don't know what to do here because it's just this archaic industry, even though it's not, but they're so stuck in their ways because it was just so easy for them for so long. And now they're like, oh crap, we got to do what they're doing on social media instead of just making their product better.
Yeah. And, since you started and had the transition from radio to, to media and eventually now to kind of all those things and influencers, what was the first brand that approached you to do a partnership?
So I was doing campaigns while on the radio as well on social media.
Oh, okay.
Not as much, but I was definitely doing them. I had some, Allstate had me run a 5K. That was the first and only time I ran a 5K, but I did love it. That was something I did that wasn't part of a radio endorsement. But it's the first company to approach us after being let go was Seattle Gummy Company. And you can get them anywhere. They're not CBD. Everyone thinks immediately I'm talking about weed gummies because I say Seattle. I'm allergic to coffee beans and I could not find any substitution for coffee. And I found their company and I loved them. And I randomly tagged them in something, or Anthony randomly tagged them in something. And it was a week after we got let go. And they reached out to us, and truly for 4 years now, they've been a partner. They were the first partner of our show. And it's very organic how we do everything with them. It's not your traditional paid posts. It's how they support the show and us in general, and how we support them. It's this really cool relationship that we don't have with any other brand. They don't have with any other influencer. So shout out to them because they believed in us from day one. But I think my first social campaign was probably like FabFitFun in 2015 or 16, probably way back then. But there's been a lot.
As you've watched it evolve, coming from the earlier days and, seeing radio promos and all this, and it's evolved. How do you feel like it's gotten better, and in what ways maybe worse over time? And if you're a new brand kind of launching, maybe what advice would you give them from the experience you've had with these different brands?
I think it's gotten better in that the bar is held higher for content when it comes to these campaigns, because a brand can say to you, just have fun with it, but they expect the audio to be great. They expect the editing to be awesome. And I think that is the good part of it, is we're not just getting, this random Instagram photo, because when I first started doing this, you could literally only post a photo to Instagram. There was no carousel. There were no stories. There were no videos. You literally could not even post a video, not even a reel. So that's what's been really cool to see. So I think the good thing is that people are expected to put out quality content in that aspect. I'm not talking about you have to have a full TV production. It has to be storyboarded, all of that. But it's just people expect great quality if you're working with a brand and it is a paid campaign. The bad side of it is that at this point, I do think it is actually hard to get campaigns, because there are so many people. There are so many incredible micro influencers out there now that are being paid way less, as they should, because they do have less followers, but brands are taking their user-generated content and put it doesn't matter to the brand. It's still an ad that they can then boost, and it's still great quality content. So that is amazing for these newer influencers, but it is just harder to get brands, I think, at this point. I would say that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it is awesome that more people are having this opportunity, but it's just harder. We just
need to get more brands out there doing influencer marketing and engaging. It's funny. I talk a lot about, trying to explain what we do to like family, friends, and people who aren't as in tune with social. And it's funny, I think about my number one example is thinking about how much it costs to put out a Super Bowl ad, between the production and then paying for the 30-second slot. And then from a targeting perspective, you're getting 100 million worldwide people of every age demographic and every tax bracket. There's zero targeting other than US and pays attention to pop culture, probably.
Right.
Whereas, with influencers, and this is part of what you mentioned, I think, the targeting, the ability to hit the Seattle market, for instance,
right.
With Seattle gummies, while they can sell everywhere, there is an affinity for Seattle. And so targeting that locale with you, who also has this strong following in Seattle, is a much more effective way. And it's more genuine. There's a Seattle connection. You're more relatable. You're a user who loves the product and doesn't have to be prompted. So it's interesting, but, yeah, I think the kind of old school traditional pay $1 million to produce an ad, pay $15 million to have it aired for 30 seconds. It just doesn't make sense for most people.
It doesn't.
Anymore.
And it took something like social media to shake up the radio TV industry. I mean, they had such a chokehold on these brands. And what's crazy, and I'm assuming it's the same for TV, is we started seeing this thing on radio where these clients would come in and say, okay, well, how do we know who heard the ad? And our salespeople would be like, well, you don't. You just expect it's this amount. And they're like, what do you mean? Because they started seeing these super targeted. You can see every person that clicks on the ad through social media. But in radio, it's like, well, we just use Nielsen ratings, and we'll get them back in 3 months, and we'll be able to tell you that maybe this amount of people listened. And it's like, make it better. And I think that is what we're finally seeing, is radio, TV, and even Nielsen being like, oh crap, we just kind of just been skating along all these years, and now it's time to make a better product.
100%.
Yeah. We just get more and more digital, and like in order for anyone to survive, any organizations to survive, any brands to thrive, they have to find a way to connect to people closer with what's going on in their hand, And so, a couple of things that we love to touch on before we close out. So I'm going to start here with, if you could find and pick any brand at all on earth right now You can name one or two, maybe three if you want, that if they knocked on your door right now, you would jump for joy and stick to the roof like one of your cats that you would want to work with. Who would they be?
Hi, Rivian. Please, please come to my door with a bow around any of your vehicles. I so badly want to work with an electric car company, but I think just Rivian looks so freaking cool. So that would be like number one. So if you're listening, I'll give you my address. Just come on by. But I think that would be so cool. And I haven't really seen any social campaigns with influencers when it comes to them. I've seen obviously Tesla a bunch. I've seen a bunch of YouTube creators with Teslas doing videos, but I personally haven't seen much for them. So I think I could be a huge help there. And other brands, I think a dream would probably be something like Nike or Adidas. I mean, just the big ones. So be able to be like, oh my God, Nike put me in a campaign, or I got to do something with Nike. I think that would be an absolute dream.
That's awesome. We'll have to figure out Rivian. I think we're running the new Bronco campaign. So maybe
wait, am I saying it wrong? Is it Rivian or Rivian?
I don't know. I could be saying it wrong too. This is the problem this is the problem with ambiguous spelling is no one knows the right way to pronounce it.
Maybe I have an idea. The campaign is about how to say the name.
Okay, this is gonna be the pitch. We'll just send it straight over to them.
Yep, brilliant. Yeah, we're just gonna chop this 2 minutes and send it over.
Okay, thank you.
It's so funny. We always ask the question about favorite experiences, and I think legitimately 3 or 4 have all been SUVs in the desert, followed by flying in a helicopter. So we can get the name pronunciation. We can drive some whatever you want to call it, Rivian. Vehicles out in the desert and then fly back in a helicopter. It'd be great.
Would love to see
that. Look at this. This is what this show's all about. It's about getting Carla Marie and a Rivian in the desert.
Yes. Wait, I think it is now that you're saying. I think it is Rivian, not Rivian. I don't know. I just made it. I made it sound way too fancy when I said Rivian.
We'll get in touch with them. We'll get the correct pronunciation of it. So I'm curious, with everything you have going on, irons in the fire everywhere. What's on tap for the rest of the year? What are the big ambitions? If you could say a year from now, this is kind of the big goals that we're aiming after.
Oof. Okay. So we did have, separate of everything media-wise, we have an apparel company where we have shirts, hoodies, t-shirts, hats, everything. And they all say, "You look great." "You look great" was a phrase we started using on the radio when callers would call into the show. We would hang up, and instead of saying bye, they would be like, "You look great." And everyone in the studio would yell back, "You look great." And we kind of just ran with that. And since going out on our own, we had an apparel line. We would donate to different charities. So there was a lot there, and it's kind of gone by the wayside because we're just focusing on the constant content that we're putting out. And my goal for this next year is to really relaunch that, better quality, just make it different and better. So that is my personal goal over this next year. And as a show, content wise, we just want to grow more. A perfect thing would be to have someone else working with us to then grow the show even more, because it is so hard, like I said, to get that content out daily. We're doing 9 shows a week right now between the podcast, our live show. It's a lot, and it's so hard to promote that when you're doing 9 shows. So to have someone else working for us would be ideal. We just need to make more money to hire that person. So those are my 2 goals over this next year.
Man, 9 shows a week. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, 5 of them are pre-recorded, but they're pre-recorded the day before. It's not like months in advance. So that's the morning show podcast. But each episode is under 25 minutes, but it's heavily researched. And because it's, it's news, it's headlines. We're saying what's happening in the world. It's not just randomly talking and having fun. So there's a lot of prep. And then we do the 3 live morning shows a week on Twitch and YouTube. And then now with me doing the breast explant podcast. So it's 9 total a week, which is absolutely insane that we create and produce them all on our own.
Yeah. Well, your mother was right. You do love to talk.
Sorry. Actually, no, I'm not saying sorry. I talk a lot. I know. That's what pays the bills. But I don't shut up.
And we love that for you. It has gotten you to all the right places. Well, I mean, I mean, I'll start off by saying, Carla Marie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Obviously been incredibly insightful, learning a lot about your past, and excited for all the things that are about to happen in your future as well. Hopefully a Rivian partnership somewhere in there.
Yes, if I can say it right.
Yeah,
No.
right. We've got a lot of things to look forward to, but with everything coming together, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll pass it off to Scott and he can give us some last words.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, obviously been in the game a long time, and I just think it's such an awesome story to follow your passion and kind of as the journey winds, jump on those opportunities, take risks, believe in yourself, and then along the way, again, that calling might not be apparent today, but as it comes, lean in and when you find your calling, your passion, again, lean in. So I love what you're doing for other women, entertaining, keeping people happy. And it was great to connect with you.
No, you guys were awesome. Thank you for letting me be on your platform and share my story, because I mean, it's awesome to get to do this. And I appreciate you both very, very much. And thank you for letting me ramble.
For anytime. Come on back and ramble at any point in time. With that being said, thank you everybody today for joining us for Beyond Influence. That is the end of our episode. We are very, very excited for seeing you next week. So until then, bye-bye.